Hello, my name is Marian Parsons. I'm from the blog Miss Mustard Seed, and this is a follow-up to a previous video where I showed how to apply the first coat of milk paint. So this whole piece has just one coat of milk paint. Obviously, it needs a second. It's a little streaky in some places, and the color is not fully opaque. So I'm going to apply a second coat of milk paint. In my experience, most pieces need 2 coats. Specifically, if the color contrast from what the piece is to what it's going to be is higher. So this piece was a relatively dark oak cabinet, and I painted it in a couple of mid-tone colors from our line. The interior is painted with Mora, which is sort of a greenish grayish blue. And then the exterior is painted with Shutter Gray, which Shutter Gray is a little bit darker and the coverage is a little bit better than the Mora. But if I was painting this white, for example, I probably would have to paint 3 or 4 coats on it since milk paint is pretty thin. If I was painting it typewriter, which is our black, I may be able to get away with just 1 coat. So it all depends on what you're painting. I've mixed up another batch of Mora since I used all of the portion that I mixed for the first coat. I mixed up a little bit less. So for the first coat, I needed about 1.5 cups of mixed milk paint. That's not 1.5 cups of powder. That's once it's mixed. And now I have about 1 cup of milk paint because I don't need quite as much for the second coat. I'm just going to go over all of the areas to make sure that I get good coverage. If you need some tips on mixing milk paint, we do have a couple of videos on that. And I'm just going to brush on the second coat. The first coat has bonding agent in it, and so I added a little bit to the second coat as well, just to help with adhesion. And the nice thing about milk paint, since it is thin, it goes over itself really well. You don't get any kind of, it's not gummy or anything. It doesn't start to feel really thick. Even when you get into the, 5 to 6 coat territory, it still goes on nice and smooth over itself. And now you can see with a second coat, I have an opaque, really nice finish. So rarely do you have to go into more coats. I allowed this to dry for about a couple hours, maybe 2 hours or so. You don't have to wait that long though. I waited that long because I was working on some other projects. Also, I had to finish painting out this whole hutch, which is a huge piece, so that took me a while. But you can really apply the second coat as soon as the first coat is dry. Sometimes you can even get away with putting it on when it's a little bit tacky, but it depends on your surface. You don't want to rush things and end up pulling off some of the paint. As I did with the first coat, I'm going to keep a stir stick handy so I can stir the paint regularly to keep it, to make sure that the color is uniformly mixed. It's sort of like using an all-natural peanut butter. It just requires a stir now and then. So it's a good idea just to keep the stir stick in the jar or in the cup or whatever you're using to mix the paint. So I'm going to keep painting this on, and then the second coat will be done.